Thank you all. I am so happy to be here this evening and to see all of you and to welcome those of you who are watching through our live webcast, family, friends, seekers, and members across the country and hopefully across the world. I'm assuming that you're here tonight because you would like to laugh a little bit. So let's start with some laughter. Harry, you're on. He is so funny. I love that. My grandson, who's 2.5, loves to watch funny baby videos. And so I accidentally stumbled across this little guy laughing at paper being torn up. I think he must be laughing because he thinks it's his tax form being torn up or something along those lines. Before we start, I do have a disclaimer. We're talking about laughter and spirituality. I am not a comedian, although probably if I could, I would love to be a stand-up comic, but that's not happening in this incarnation, maybe next one. And in terms of spirituality, I'm certainly not an expert, but I am a seeker, like all of us. And so this seems like an interesting topic to sort of think about and talk about just a little bit. So laughter and spirituality. These are two topics that typically don't go together. We don't really think of them at the same time. So tonight we're going to look a little bit at laughter, then we're going to look a little bit at spirituality, and then we're going to look at all of it together. Laughter. Looking at those pictures makes me want to smile and laugh. Not quite as much as that baby laughing, but almost. So according to the Merriam-Webster online dictionary, the definition of laughter is to show emotion, such as mirth, joy, or scorn, with a chuckle or explosive vocal sound. You've heard people with the explosive vocal sound. I've been known to do that myself at times. To find amusement or pleasure in something. And all of those people are certainly finding pleasure. I think that says it all, doesn't it? Reincarnation disappointment, and there he is. I said hippie, not hippo. Let's talk a little bit about the brain and laughter. So from a physical perspective, the frontal lobe of our brain, this front part of our brain, is responsible for our emotional responses. The left side of our brain, you probably all know this, is responsible for logic, for organizing, for analytical thought, for language. And so when someone tells a joke or when you see a joke, the left side of your brain looks at the words, looks at the structure of the joke, and then the right side of your brain, the creative side, the part of your brain that deals with the emotions, decides if it's funny or not. Once that happens, then messages are sent to the limbic system, which is at the center of your brain. And this is where we find, well, we don't, some people do, scientists, find the amygdala and the hippocampus, which are responsible for our basic feelings, such as fear. With the amygdala, typically we think of fear. The hippocampus also with the emotions. So this is also triggered when we see or hear something funny. That triggering then activates the part of our brain, the motor region of the brain, to become active, and that's what stimulates our verbal response, our chuckle, our laugh, whatever it is we're doing. I just like talking about it. talking about the brain sounds like I know some stuff. So I thought, why not? So laughter is not just a sound. It's more than that. It's a whole body experience. When we laugh, we have 15 muscles that contract in our face. 15 muscles. Our breathing becomes irregular, half close our larynx. Even our tear ducts become activated. Our muscles throughout our whole body contract as laughter moves from our face all the way through our bodies. Increases breathing and body temperature, metabolism, heart rate and pulse. Oxygen flow throughout the body. Bottom line is, laughter is healthy for our bodies. I like that. Don't get much exercise, so I'll just laugh. This is for Christine. Can't smile causes wrinkles. So while I was doing research for this program, I came across an article, actually several, about a lady in the United Kingdom who claims that she didn't smile for 40 years so that she didn't create wrinkles. How sad. That's sad. I have lots of wrinkles. Hopefully you can't see them from this far away. Don't put the camera too close. But those laugh lines, they make me happy. They make me think, you know what? It's been a good life so far. There's been enough laughter, enough happiness to cause those wrinkles. And I'm good with that. So you won't catch me not smiling for 40 years. Laughter also improves our immune system. I think I need to be laughing more. Within our immune system, when we laugh, it increases the production of T cells. Those are the body's natural defenses against, I'm not going to read to you, you can read that. It also increases B cells, which create the disease-destroying antibodies, and the immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins, I don't know what that is, y'all. I'm not a medical doctor. But those are increased, and those help us fight infection. So the bottom line is, again, laughter strengthens our immune system. Just a little reminder, be careful who you take fishing. It's not a very vegetarian joke, but it is a pretty funny one. So in terms of our brain chemistry, laughter decreases those levels of cortisol, epinephrine, the growth hormone, and that big long word there, which is a major dopamine catabolite. Those are all things that are involved when we have a stress response. So the decrease of those indicates that our stress response is decreasing. Endorphins are secreted. You've heard about a runner's high. Is it true that there's such a thing as a runner's high? Yes, our in-house runner, yes. You can get an endorphin rush, a runner's high, by laughing. Okay. Dopamine and serotonin are also increased. With depression, and there are a number of people in our world today who struggle with depression, the neurotransmitters in the brain, such as norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin, are reduced. That's just one of those brain chemistry things that happen with depression. So when we laugh, dopamine and serotonin both increase, which helps to improve our mood. So again, laughter decreases stress and provides a natural high. It says, my mind is especially empty today. A Buddhist joke. Actually, my mind is almost always that empty. So, laughter on social interactions and mental health. When we share laughter, when we laugh together, it strengthens our relationships. It triggers positive feelings and fosters that sense of emotional connection. Have you ever had that experience of laughing with a good friend, a spouse, family member, even somebody you don't really like? Okay, it fosters that sense of connection. It's a form of communication. From a mental health perspective, Laughter stops distressing emotions. When we're laughing, we can't be anxious or sad or angry because we're laughing. It helps us to relax and recharge because it reduces stress and increases energy. You know, with that increased blood flow, with the increased blood flow and the increased oxygen flow, it energizes our bodies. It helps us to stay focused and accomplish more. It helps to shift our perspective a little bit and allows us to see situations maybe from a different perspective. It allows us to laugh at some things that are very serious. But when you think about them, the options are to laugh or to cry. Crying doesn't help. Laughing may not help the situation, but at least it helps us to deal with that situation. Laughter essentially pulls us together. It pulls us together. And that has a profound impact on all of our social and on our mental health. Children laugh hundreds of times a day. The research that I did indicated anywhere from 200 times a day to 400 times a day. Adults laugh on average 17 times a day. Some research indicated that some adults only laugh 4 times a day. That's not much fun. What is wrong with us? We should be laughing all of the time. It helps our bodies. It helps our physical health. It helps our immune system. It helps us with our mental health. We should be laughing. See, they're laughing. They're having fun. So are you ready to laugh again? Shall I tell you a story? Okay, so this story is not about me. Let me tell you that first and foremost. Nor is it about my children. It could be about my children, but this one just doesn't happen to be. When my children were involved, we didn't call a pastor. Typically, it was the police who were involved. If you guys are watching, I'm sorry, no details. So, a couple had 2 little boys. They were ages 8 and 10, who were excessively mischievous. They were rotten. They got into trouble all the time, always. And their parents could be sure that if something happened in their little town, that their kids were somehow or another involved. They were at their wits' end and really didn't know what to do about their little boys. Worried about what was happening to them then, what would happen in the future. So they heard that there was a clergyman in town who had been successful in disciplining children. So they contacted him, and he agreed to talk to the little boys. So the 8-year-old came in first, the littlest one. And the clergyman sat the boy down and asked him sternly, "Where is God?" And the little boy just looked at him with great big eyes. So the clergyman said, a little bit more sternly, "Where is God?" Little boy, big eyes, no answer. And then the clergyman, getting kind of frustrated here, says, "Where is God?" And the little 8-year-old got up, ran home as fast as he could, and slammed himself in the closet. And his brother, 10-year-old brother, came in and said, "What happened?" And the little guy said, "We are in so much trouble. God is missing and they think we did it." So let's move on to spirituality for just a few minutes. So what is spirituality? Okay. Spirituality is relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. So says the Oxford Online Dictionary. So when we focus on spirituality, when we are thinking about it for ourselves, we're not focusing on the physical, we're not focusing on the material. Rather, we're trying to connect with that higher aspect of ourselves, or that higher aspect of reality that some people may call the ultimate reality, some may call Allah or Jehovah or God. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect with that component of ourselves, not this physical person that lives in this illusory world. So when we do that, we really need to look at ourselves when we're trying to make that connection. It's so important that we do the self-observation. We look at our actions and our reactions, at our thoughts, at our feelings, at our motivations. We must look at ourselves in order to be able to make that connection. And I have to tell you that if we do that honestly and we do that objectively, it's not much fun. Because then we see all those parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden, that we'd rather no one else see. I don't even want to see those parts of me. But I need to see them if I'm going to work on them. So it makes sense that working on this, improving this here, it's not a lot of fun. And so we don't often think of it with laughter. In fact, we think about it very seriously, don't we? We think about it very seriously. So religion and spirituality really have come to be thought of as quite serious. When we look at the history of religion, it makes sense that we're serious about it because it is a serious business, or it has been. Disagreeing with the status quo or the authorities or the powers in charge, it was dangerous. If we look just at the Western world, we can look at the persecution of pagans by the ancient Greeks and Romans. We can look at the Inquisition, the Crusades, the Cathars. We can look at the burning of Protestants in 16th century England by Queen Mary I. We look at the Salem witch trials. And we can go on and on. Have I cheered you up yet? Today, even, religious minorities are terrorized in this country as well as around the world. When I think about these things, I think about, I was an English teacher. It was this actual incarnation, but it feels like 2 or 3 incarnations ago. I was an English teacher, and so one of the things I had the joy of teaching was the sermon given by Jonathan Edwards, the famous Puritan clergyman. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Try explaining that to teenagers. If I had to sit and listen to a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, I can assure you I would sit up straight and listen. I wouldn't be laughing. There's nothing funny about that. Religion and spirituality, through the ages, have been serious issues. Lives at stake. An image issue. Renee Garfunkel writes, religion has an image problem. It is badly in need of rebranding. Religion's public image is grim. It's all fire and brimstone and Dante's Inferno. Severe and reproving, religion's reputation is largely one of humorless inhibition and pleasure fearing. Even New Age religions, the self-described, more spiritual religion light, even they seem to emphasize a life of what's good for you, with a whiff of tofu and kale. You know people like that, don't you? Yeah. Oh, I've got the tofurkey in the oven and I'm making a salad of kale and seaweed and other things that are green and yucky looking. But we all know people like that, right? But we're not naming names and I'm not pointing fingers tonight. Maybe another time I'll share that with you. This one kind of catches you, doesn't it? Muhammad, Buddha, and Jesus walk into a bar. Muhammad says, why do they keep killing in my name? And Buddha, I never sanctioned ethnic cleansing in Burma. And Jesus, try explaining the Crusades and the Inquisition. Kind of catches you, doesn't it? So, serious. Spirituality and religion are serious issues. Or are they? Is it just us taking ourselves seriously? That's the real question, isn't it? Jim Towles writes, seriousness is often an ego game, where your ego is trying to get respect and living in a little tiny box that can't even contain a fraction of your fullness. In those regards, many people will find their way to awakening through humor, because the seriousness of life will have finished teaching them all that it can. There will be nothing left to be serious about. You'll start to realize that it's all a big joke. This may sound glib in the face of atrocity and rapes that go on in the world. But ultimately, the cosmic joke is that we've made up everything. Most of these difficulties in the world are our own creation, and we can uncreate them anytime as a collective group. In our own lives, we feel this more personally. We see how we can get completely caught up and serious about our jobs, right? John's very serious about his job because I'm keeping an eye on him. I've noticed Augie's sitting in the and Marina's sitting in the front row because, good work, Danellis.
I didn't do anything.
No, I'm really just teasing. But we get caught up, in our jobs and finding a romance or making sure we're getting along with our partner or acquiring things, right? We get very serious about all of this. See all those business suit people? Yikes. But even people who see themselves in that meditative position, sometimes they take themselves pretty seriously too, don't they? Walking the spiritual path. When we're serious about walking the spiritual path, we can sometimes begin to take ourselves seriously. She looks like she's taking herself very seriously, doesn't she? Dressed in white, walking through the woods and slowly across this decrepit bridge. It might fall at any moment or she might fall off. I mean, that's serious spiritual stuff. As opposed to this little guy, he's all about it. Yay, I'm on the path. He's happy. It's a bit of a paradox, taking ourselves so seriously when this person here, is actually the most insignificant and temporary part of who I am. This body, this life, it's not who I am. It's not who you are. Yet we take it, ourselves, very seriously. We're not this. We're what looks out of this. Harvey Mindus, with the World Laughter Tour, sounds like someplace I want to go, tells us, perhaps the essence of humor and spirituality can be defined in terms of the difference between our peripheral selves and our essential selves. Most of us identify too strongly with our looks, our possessions, our social status, our achievements. We see ourselves in all the layers of being that enclose our central core. We do, don't we? We see ourselves. And I spent time tonight trying to look nice. Why? I don't know, because you would think maybe I wasn't as good if I didn't look as nice, if my hair was all standing up on end, or I don't know. By learning to laugh at those layers, those facades and pretensions with which we attempt to impress the world, we are able to slip out of them as a snake slips out of its skin. This permits us to contact that part of ourselves that religion calls our soul. We call it our essential self, but it amounts to the same thing. Many Theosophists may call it our higher self. It really doesn't matter. Those are just words. This is an affirmation that we embody at least a spark of divinity, and that life at its core is to be cherished. Okay, I'm getting too serious. So come on, God, get in there. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Jewish Hasidic movement, said, "Humor is that thing that ushers a person's mind from a place of constricted consciousness to a place of expanded consciousness." How often do people try to take God, or whatever we call that ultimate reality that Theosophists typically describe as infinite, eternal, and omnipresent, and shove it into a box designed in a specific way and a very personal way? That box is created for the personality, and we try to shove that boundless, infinite into it. Look at those guys. They're so happy. It is so incredibly valuable for us on the spiritual path, I think, to have laughter and humor, because they allow us to see past this physical facade and to contact that true essence of who we are. Jim Tolles writes, "With humor, we are enacting happiness. We are embodying happiness. We are giving ourselves a chance to feel it in the heart, body, and mind." That's a wonderfully easy way to embody spirit and the joy of living. He also tells us the spiritual path isn't always fraught with constant emotional purging, hours of meditation, and a whole host of difficult and challenging things. Now, they may be there, okay, but that's not all there is to it. And yet I think a lot of times we feel like, if we're not doing something spiritual, if we're laughing or we're being silly, that we're kind of wasting time. But we're really not, from my perspective. Clearly, laughter and spirituality are not mutually exclusive. Laughter and humor enhance our spirituality and help us to move further on the spiritual path. Thinking about this makes me wonder. What is it about being silly, about making fun of ourselves, not others, but making fun of ourselves, that makes us uncomfortable? Is it attachment to the ego, that peripheral self? Something to think about. In a letter to Pekka Ervast, who was a Theosophical member in Finland, in November 1900, Colonel Henry Alcott, who was one of the co-founders of the Theosophical Society, he commends Ervast for his article regarding humor and spirituality. And he says, "Your remarks," starting here for those of you who have really good eyesight, "your remarks in your magazine article about the compatibility of cheerful and humoristic tendencies with good spiritual work are perfectly just. As you say, it is only ignorance which associates moroseness with spiritual advancement." H.P. Blavatsky, the other co-founder of the Theosophical Society, was herself a striking proof to the contrary, for there could be no one more full of fun and at the same time of burning zeal in the service of our Master. I may go further and say that among the masters with whom our work has been connected, there is one who is brimful of fun and a great lover of wit and repartee. Some of the best things in Isis Unveiled of this kind come from him. So clearly, the founders of the Theosophical Society didn't see an issue with humor and spirituality. Love this copy of this letter. Michael Gomes, if you're watching, thank you. He sent this to me when he knew I was going to do this talk. So laughing at ourselves. I'm not about laughing at other people, but I'm okay about laughing at me. I'm assuming that y'all can tell that this is me. This is our holiday party. And these are my reindeer antlers that I created from a pair of pantyhose, which, by the way, still do exist in the world, and balloons that were shoved into the legs to... There are pictures of other people from our staff who are also wearing these, but again, not laughing at others, just laughing at ourselves. So, when we laugh at ourselves, we are laughing at the humanness of ourselves, recognizing that this humanness is not all that we are. We all make mistakes. We all do silly or even preposterous things at times. Now, you'd think it was enough to embarrass myself by putting this picture up here. But no, I'm going to take it one step further. As you know, I have spent a number of years working as a counselor with children. And I was working with a 5-year-old one time. Let's call her Susie. That's not her real name. This was quite a while back. And so there had been some abuse allegations regarding Susie. But there were also some family issues. And so I was working with Susie about feelings. And so she was 5 years old. She'd come into my playroom, and I have all sorts of things in my playroom, colors and things to color on, and a sandbox and Play-Doh and baby dolls and whatever. So every week, Susie would come in and she would play for the whole time, which was great because that's what you do in play therapy when you're a child. But also there's supposed to be some feeling expression going on. I was just beginning my play therapy life. And so Susie was just, I would talk to her and I'd say, so how does the baby doll feel? Trying to elicit some feelings through the baby doll that she was playing with. And she wouldn't answer. Children are so wonderful. When they don't want to answer you, they just pretend like they don't hear you. Okay? And so as adults, foolishly, we just talk louder and they continue to ignore us until we finally just give up and leave them alone. Well, that's what Susie did for quite a while. I mean, like weeks and weeks and maybe even several months. One day she was there and she was coloring. I really don't even remember what at this point. And I was starting to feel a little frustrated because, her mom was paying me for Susie to come in and work through her issues, and I was feeling like we need to do something here. And so I said, so Susie, we really need to talk about feelings. And she looked at me like, are you the dumbest person in the world or what? Which kind of heightened my anxiety a little bit. And I said, we really need to talk about feelings, sweetie. We really need to talk about how you feel about. And again, she looks up from drawing like, really? She didn't say anything. So in my infinite wisdom, I said to a 5-year-old, let's be clear, to a 5-year-old, honey, if you're not going to talk about feelings, there's really no reason for you to come back and see me anymore. And she looked at me like, you think I care? She wasn't the one who'd chosen to come in the first place. It was her mom who was bringing her. So I was so frustrated. So Susie left. And fortunately, I was in a supervision group at that point in time. And so I went to my supervision group and I shared with the other counselors there this experience with Susie. And to my dismay, they burst out laughing. I'm thinking, why are you laughing at me? This is serious. She's not working on her feelings. And they look at me and they said, you just got in a power struggle with a 5-year-old. And you lost. And you lost. What did you think was going to happen? So it did make me stop and think. And it made me kind of smile to myself. Now I can laugh at myself. So the end of the story is that the next week when Susie came back in, she's sitting there coloring, and I said, "Do you remember last week when you were here and you were coloring?" And she looked at me. Again, no answer, but just like, of course. And I said, "Well, I got really frustrated because I really wanted you to talk about your feelings. And I was feeling frustrated. And so I said that to you, and I didn't mean it. I really do want you to come back here. And we can talk about whatever you're comfortable talking about." And I'm going to tell you that in about 15 minutes, that child started talking about her feelings. All she needed was that support. But what I needed was to get over myself, to quit thinking about this and my anxiety, my frustration, because it wasn't about me. It's about something much deeper. And that's what humor allows us to do. When we can laugh at ourselves, when we can look at the silly things that we do, and we all do them, then we can take steps forward. When we laugh together, we're dropping those pretenses, and we're coming together at a deeper level. We are actually beginning to have that intuitive sense of unity that pervades all of creation. And there's Buddha and Jesus. Buddha. I should have made one of those nobody can depict me rules. They always make me fat. And Jesus, tell me about it. I've been a blonde white dude for like 2,000 years. So Adam Pearson tells us, "It was Zen that taught me that laughter can be a form of spirituality. Zen masters often have great laughs with one another. Since then, I've also met Christian priests, jovial Jews, smiley Sikhs, or Sikhs, devout Muslims, devoted Hindus, that all know how to laugh about their traditions, even while remaining reverent of them. In fact, I think that for me, the most convincing Christian missionaries I ever met were those who knew how to laugh at their own religion. The stone-cold ones were easy to dismiss. But those who could laugh at their own faith, now they were worth hearing." He continues saying, "We have all met religious people who are so rigid about their beliefs that they cannot so much as smile. They seem to be lacking a deep and wonderful dimension of their religious traditions that they have not yet accessed. The dimension of the LOL, laugh out loud. Indeed, in closing, this is still Adam Pearson, I would almost go so far as to say that superficial religiosity cannot so much as crack a smile, but deep spirituality can get us rolling around on the floor like a bunch of sugar-crazed kids on a pixie sticks binge." The Buddha. "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." May we all laugh at ourselves. May we all be filled with laughter, and may we all tilt our heads back and laugh at the sky. Thank you.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
I would just like to ask, do you know what dyslexic, insomniac dogs do while they're lying in their beds at night?
No, but I can't wait to hear.
They lie there wondering if there's a God.
That's very good. That's very good.
Very good talk. Thank you,
Thank
Barbara. The explanations you had in this help me explain to my wife, we have a 3-year-old who does something I do. And when there's some injury or bumped your knee or something, she tends to laugh. And this is something I've always done. I've wondered why. And now my 3-year-old does this, and my wife is trying to correct that. But you've explained perfectly why we do that.
Absolutely. It's all about the brain. All of those emotions in there together, and they can, I assume that's what you're talking about. They can kind of slip and slide. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, laughed at the most inappropriate time? Oh my goodness. To be at a funeral and start to giggle? My sister and I were sitting together. I'm not going to name the relation who had passed away because there may be more family watching. But we were at the funeral service itself, and the minister was saying all these wonderful things about this person who'd passed away. And I looked at my sister and I said, "Do you think he knew him?" Because and then we got the giggles. But again, it's that whole, when you're supposed to be serious or when there's a moment of fear, when we hurt ourselves, we can sometimes respond with fear, but sometimes we respond with laughter. Yeah.
I always go back to the Mary Tyler Moore episode with Chuckles the Clown, when she's sitting there and the minister is giving, the talk about how Chuckles the Clown was such a good person, and he was run over by a rogue elephant. And she's sitting there and she's laughing hysterical, and then she shrivels up, and then she keeps laughing, and all of a sudden she just lets out a sob and starts crying. So it's emotion, it's all tied together.
Two sides of the same coin. Yeah, that's a good example. If I thought of that, I could have played it. I'll add on for next time. I'll find it.
There are studies which show that if you have a good rapport with your patients, the complication rate is almost like a 40% reduction in the complications.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's a rapport and have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And that can come with the humor and laughter.
I was wondering sometimes if you always hear there's too much of a good thing. In the past, I've known some people that had like a nervous laugh, and then other people, if you don't know them and they laugh too much, you think, what's going on with them. Mm-hmm. And I think but we're not taught that it's okay to do that.
No.
It's not okay,
We're really taught that most of our emotions are not acceptable. Whether it's laughter or sadness, we're told that we need to be stoic and straight-faced and deal with things and move on. And, boys don't cry, men don't cry, girls don't laugh loudly. They ha 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 ha. I mean, we're told this, right? That's what our culture kind of enculturates into us. So yeah, feelings are good. No matter what the feeling itself is valuable and useful. It's what we do with that feeling. Anger is good and healthy. So it's okay to be angry. It's not okay if I'm angry with John to punch him. That's not okay. But it's okay to be angry. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Barbara, for the wonderful talk. And I really need this laughter tonight. I'm a little bit under the weather. If I understood you correctly, you were talking about that when we laugh, we connect with this higher aspect of ourselves. And I wonder if what truly laughs through us is the higher self himself or itself, right? As opposed to just our personalities making a joke of it, right? Is that who is gazing downwards, and as you said, whatever is looking out. How do you sense that? Yeah. Because it could well be.
It really could be, couldn't it?
The one that have fun, is the one who has the fun,
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't I think that's a rhetorical question. I have no idea what the real answer is. But it certainly makes sense, especially if we're laughing at ourselves, at the ridiculousness of this physical incarnation thing. If we're laughing at somebody else, I seriously doubt that it's any higher aspect of me. It's my personality that's not being very kind at the moment. So
I really appreciated the slide with children laughing hundreds of times and adults, 17. And I think it's, in my experience looking at other cultures, it's probably cross-cultural that way. So I guess what I would like to have your help to explore is, number one, how do we all get to that space where we go from hundreds to 17? And I think there's some simple answers and probably some pretty complex ones. And I guess, so it's good to say to laugh more, but I guess what shifts in our lives do we need to make so that we can become more childlike in that way, but yet still carry on all our responsibilities? And anyway, whatever you have to say is helpful.
That's a really, I think, a really valuable and pertinent question. And I think that part of it, so a simplistic answer, because I agree with you. I think the answer is complex and multidimensional. But I think one of the ways is to not take ourselves quite so seriously and not to be so worried about what other people are going to think about us. If I was worried about what you thought of me or the people out in Cameraland thought of me, I probably wouldn't have put up the picture of me with the antlers, but I'm okay with that because I'm comfortable with who I am inside. I know who I am inside, for the most part. And I'm still working on it, but for the most part. I think that's one thing. And I think the other way to pull laughter into our lives is to be conscious about it and to really do it, to find people who are funny or who make us laugh and spend time with them. To say, you know what, I really need to laugh. And do something as simple as watch funny videos on YouTube or America's Funniest Home Videos always makes me laugh. Sometimes to the point where I'm crying because I can't imagine how foolish people are sometimes. I am laughing at them, but they've offered that to me, so I'll take advantage of that. I think spending time with children is a great way because they give us permission to be ourselves. They don't judge. Children don't judge. So they allow us to be who we are. One thing my family really enjoys doing, we typically only do it on vacation when we're all together, but there's a game called Catchphrase. I don't know, it's a game. But we play catchphrase together, and we end up laughing until we're crying, simply because it's so silly. And then once one person starts to laugh, everybody starts to laugh, and it's contagious, and we just keep laughing and laughing. If you ever laughed till your sides hurt, until your body was sore, that's the kind of laughter that, I think would probably be healthy for all of us. I haven't done that for a while. I need a vacation, y'all. Can I go? I didn't laugh that hard in India. Okay. Those are just some thoughts.
Thank you very much for the speech and for giving us permission to do things that we know we should always do. I also have another comment about why and how we get to where we were. Children, instinctively laugh, and I think as we get older, we become more comfortable in our skin, and there's so many things that happen in our lives that cause tragedy or sadness that we find we have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, you don't have friends. But I think somewhere in the middle, is it possible that our school systems and our efforts to train children to behave in certain ways and force children to behave during their school years in certain ways, is that something that could possibly help to decrease that desire for them to laugh, even though they get out for recess and they're giggling and laughing all the time? But go to a funeral and the children aren't allowed to do things. They have to sit quietly. So we put that on them, and they get two different messages. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and that's actually a whole different lecture that I could share with a number of educators in this room, that we actually educate our children, I think, out of their freedom, their sense of flexibility. You know, you can ask a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old to draw me a picture, and they'll be happy to draw you a picture. You ask a 7-year-old to draw you a picture, and they'll be like, "No, well, I don't draw very good." Because somewhere in there, we've told them that the sky, that the sun cannot be blue, and the grass can't be pink, you know, and that this looks good. This is good. Oh, what a good picture you did. Oh, well, you know what? You drew a picture of a ship, but you didn't put it by the water. You know, we do this to children. A 4-year-old will sing happily. Are there any of you in here who would gladly get up here and just sing? Maybe 1 or 2 who have really good voices because you've gotten that over the years. But for the rest of us who've been told, no more, we're not going to do that. So yes, I think with behaviors, all kinds of behaviors, we train it out of our children.
So do you have some thoughts and suggestions that we as family members or we as friends can do with children to not negate the training and the lessons that they're learned, because we do have to learn social behavior, but also to encourage, other than constantly telling them they're wonderful, which kind of puts it over the other end.
Well, yeah, and it's a problem. So I'm going to, thank you. Oh, this is so much fun. This is, I love this. Because this is a passion for me. And so one of the things that I work with parents and with counselors in training is teaching them the difference between encouragement and praise. We praise our children frequently. Oh, that's a great picture. You look so pretty in that dress. Good job, you hit a home run. As opposed to encouragement, which praise focuses on the goal, the end result. Encouragement focuses on the process. You worked really hard on that picture. You put a lot of colors in that picture. Well, I saw you swing really hard at that ball. Talk about the process. So we're encouraging them. We're not judging them, because once we start to feel judged, regardless of our age, we stop. We stop. So that's the very abbreviated version. Again, that could be a whole talk. But the difference between praise and encouragement to me is one of the most basic things that we can do with our children. My granddaughter is, she's 5 now. But I realized that she would say, she calls me May, and she'd say, May, I'm gonna go ride my bike, or I'm gonna go color this picture, and I'd go, perfect. What was I teaching her, right? I was teaching her to be perfect. And I heard her say it back to me at some point, and I thought, goodness, what have I done? And so I started, and I know better. But it's just kind of that normal parental response that we all have. And so to catch myself, to pay attention. And that's kind of that mindful parenting, which is, again, another talk. And there are several educators in the room who would be happy to do this with me, I think. So
I just wanted to add to the woman in the back when she said that she thought laughter could be from the spiritual inside. I've always said that crying and tears are signs of the Holy Spirit rushing through. Because in the Bible it says there's all this living water. And I love the thought that laughter is the Spirit rushing through, and I'm adding it to my thoughts because I've always said, when I cry and people are like, oh, don't cry. I'm like, are you kidding? The Spirit rushing through. I'm pretty proud of my tears, So now I can be proud of my laughter as well. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
From a Waldorf perspective, it says that we are supposed to allow the children to cry and to laugh at the same time. Not at the same time, but on the day, because the soul exercises in such a movement. So when you cry, you are out. When you laugh, you are out. And then when you cry, you come back inside, inward. So that soul movement it helps the child to incarnate more healthily as opposed to just fun. So when the child cries, there is also something that happens. It's not that, I don't think that a life could be just with laughter throughout, but that this interval in between, this soul exercise help us to develop more fully. And all the comments about the other lady that was talking about, your lady back there, I think that also the children learn through imitation, and more than how we praise them. If we are cheerful, if we are happy people, I was commenting on that the other day in one of the lectures. The children feel that, and they will imitate our behavior. You are such a fun person. We have known you for years. And being around a person like that, even though we are adults, we want to imitate that temperament. We want to feel that way, and likewise for the children. And so if a person is very sober, is very serious, the child would imitate those gestures even with his own face. So what a joy to have a grandma, such a cool grandma like you. Oh my gosh, that would be such a joy.
I'm grateful to have cool grandchildren that make me laugh.